I'd like to welcome our second panel, Chairman Mark Green and Ranking Member Benny Thompson from the Committee on Homeland Security. We'll allow Mr. Thompson a moment. Chairman Green, Ranking Member Thompson, thank you very much for being here today. Chairman Green, I welcome your testimony.
Chairman Cole, Ranking Member McGovern, thank you for the opportunity to testify on HRS 863. For nearly a year, the committee conducted comprehensive investigation into the causes, costs, and consequences of our border crisis, producing 7 separate reports totaling more than 400 pages. Our members visited multiple sectors of the southwest border and heard from law enforcement and everyday Americans affected by this crisis. We held multiple hearings with a variety of witnesses, including former senior DHS enforcement officials, states attorneys general, as well as victims of Secretary Mayorkas' crisis. Impeachment is a tool the framers wrote into the Constitution to deal with the gravest situations, like the one we have today, where the lawless actions of a cabinet secretary have led to the chaos and destruction across our land. Our investigation and impeachment proceedings resulted in 2 articles of impeachment. Article 1 charges him with willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law, and Article 2 charges him with the breach of public trust. It is unambiguous that Secretary Mayorkas has refused to comply with federal immigration laws and acted in a manner subversive to the rule of law. He has threatened the integrity of our constitutional system and imperiled the Congress, a co-equal branch of government, by ordering DHS employees to violate laws passed by Congress, thus violating the separation of powers. And he has implemented a catch and release scheme violating detention requirements and misused parole authority. We've also seen Secretary Mayorkas breach the public trust, violating his statutory duty to control and guard the border. He willfully failed to replace the enforcement initiatives he abandoned with viable alternatives, and he knowingly made false statements about the consequences of his refusal to comply with the law. Having exhausted all other options, and as suggested by United States versus Texas, Congress is the only avenue of accountability remaining, and we are compelled to act. I want to address just a few claims you'll no doubt hear from the Democrats today, claims that are false and easily disproven. One of the reasons I'm presenting these articles and not the chairman of the Judiciary Committee is because on November the 13th, 2023, 201 Democrats, every Democrat voting that day, voted to refer articles of impeachment to our committee. Additionally, we gave Secretary Mayorkas multiple opportunities since August to defend his record. Each time, he delayed and evaded. We ultimately offered to take written testimony from him. He decided to respond at 4:48 a.m. on the day of our markup. The lack of seriousness with which he takes these proceedings is shocking. Third, the House Republicans have consistently voted to substantially increase funding for CBP. H.R. 2, the border security bill the House passed last year, funds the increase of roughly 3,000 Border Patrol agents, more than double what the White House wants in its supplemental. Don't let the Democrats' false claims distract you from the truth. And the truth is that Secretary Mayorkas refused to comply with the law, even after seeing the devastating consequences. The truth is that Secretary Mayorkas broke the public trust by claiming that the border was secure, even while drug cartels took control of large swaths of the southwest border. And the truth is that Secretary Mayorkas has chosen to ignore the suffering of the American people and doubled down on his decision to keep our border open to deadly drugs, dangerous criminals, and unknown national security threats. Secretary Mayorkas' job is to secure the homeland and enforce the law. He's failed to do either of those things and must be held accountable. What is the point of us being here? What's the point of Congress if we allow the executive branch to ignore the laws we pass? If we do not hold officials accountable, then there are no longer any checks and balances. That's not a constitutional republic. That's the road to tyranny. One last point. My colleagues across the aisle assert this doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. There's a direct analogy here with the impeachment articles against Richard Nixon. Nowhere in the Nixon impeachment article is there any reference to a crime committed by the president himself. Instead, Article 2 of the Nixon impeachment refers to Nixon's acting in ways, quote, not authorized by law, end quote, and in ways that constituted, quote, unlawful activities, end quote. And that's exactly what Secretary Mayorkas has done. Also, Article 1 of the Nixon impeachment charged Nixon with, quote, making false and misleading statements, end quote, and, quote, false and misleading testimony, end quote. And they conclude he, quote, acted in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, end quote. Again, that's exactly what Secretary Mayorkas has done. The case is compelling. The evidence is indisputable. The moment is urgent. Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas must be impeached. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks for your testimony, Mr. Thompson. Thank you, Member Thompson. You're recognized.
Thank you very much. Chairman Cole, Ranking Member McGovern, I'm appearing before you today in strong opposition to HRES 863, which was reported out of the Committee of Homeland Security last week on a party line vote. Republicans' partisans' rush to consider the resolution is a betrayal of the committee's bipartisan record since it was established in the wake of 9/11. Republican members of Congress sworn to support and defend the Constitution are rejecting the framers' clear intent over 2 centuries of precedent in favor of a sham impeachment of Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. Republicans have failed to make a constitutionally viable case for impeachment. Neither of the impeachment charges reported by the committee are a high crime and misdemeanor under Article 2 of the Constitution. No serious person believes they are. Maladministration, or what committee Republicans are falsely calling refusal to follow the law, was deliberately rejected by the framer as a grounds for impeachment. Policy disputes are settled in the court system, not through impeachment. Indeed, the policy disputes Republicans list in their articles have already been addressed by the courts and decided in the Biden administration's favor, or they are currently working their way through the system. Constitutional experts have told the committee that for the breach of public trust to rise to something close to a high crime and misdemeanor, it will require conduct intended to serve an official's own benefit or the benefit of a foreign power. No serious person can allege that Secretary Mayorkas' actions meet the standard for breach of public trust. Republicans have ignored the facts and misrepresented the law to justify their scheme. But the law is clear, and so is Secretary's record. Secretary Mayorkas has leveraged all the authorities at his disposal while maximizing the resources provided by Congress to secure the border. He's removed record levels of migrants from the U.S., detained more people than Congress has provided funding for, and prevented record levels of fentanyl from entering our communities. But this sham impeachment effort isn't really about border security. It's about Republican politics and subversion of the Constitution. In testimony before the committee, in letters and in op-eds published in major newspapers, bipartisan constitutional law and impeachment experts agree the Secretary has not committed an impeachable offense. Secretary Mayorkas has faithfully implemented the administration's border policies consistent with the funding Congress has provided. At every opportunity, Republicans have refused to provide resources to the Department of Homeland Security. If House Republicans were serious about improving conditions along the border, they would provide the department the funding necessary to do so. They have not. If House Republicans were serious about improving conditions at the border, they would negotiate border security legislation with the White House and the Senate. They have not. The extreme mega Republicans who are running the House of Representatives don't want solutions. They want a political issue. House Republicans take their marching orders from Donald Trump, and he has directed them to reject a bipartisan border bill. This sham impeachment is an attempt by House Republicans to distort the Constitution and the Secretary's record to cover up their inability and unwillingness to work with Democrats to strengthen border security. Former Republican Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff recently cautioned against impeaching Secretary Mayorkas and urged bipartisan legislative action. He said, quote, "Our nation is at its best when our leaders work together to confront the seemingly intractable. The situation of our border and our national security demands such bipartisan collaboration. Despite our different parties, I know Mr. Mayorkas to be a fair and honest, dedicated to the safety and security of the U.S. He's represented DHS in the country and to both parties in Congress with integrity, unquote. That is the kind of bipartisanship we need to solve border challenges and strengthen our immigration system. Unfortunately, this sham impeachment has been nothing but partisan. During consideration in the Homeland Security Committee last week, Republicans improperly shut down the markup and blocked Democrats from offering amendments to the resolution. Extreme MAGA Republicans couldn't bear to consider amendments to their poorly drafted articles of impeachment before silencing Democrats who attempted to inject a dose of reality into the proceedings. They even blocked Democrats from including material for the markup record on 5 occasions. The truth is Republicans' actions show they don't have faith in their own case against the secretary. That's why they lack the courage of their convictions to see their markup to the end. This nonsense has to stop, and it should stop here. Republicans need to start doing the work Americans sent them here to do. Democrats are waiting for you to join us in the serious work ahead. Mr. Burgess, Ranking Member McGovern, I urge my colleagues to honor their oath to the Constitution and drop this sham impeachment.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Chairman Green, let me just ask you, you've heard a lot here. Is there any of that you want to respond to?
Well, there's a lot of it. The first accusation was a rush to get this done. We've taken almost a year of looking at this, 400 pages of reports, 5 phases of an investigation, phase 1, dereliction of duty, phase 2, the support of the drug cartels, empowering them to spread across our country. Some great reports out of San Francisco about how the Mexican cartels and the Honduran cartels have connected with the gangs in San Francisco. Phase 3, the human costs, which have been incredible. The financial cost was phase 4, and then waste, waste of millions and millions of dollars on unused ICE detention beds and hotels that were purchased that were never used. So we have exhausted our resources. We have looked into this incredibly lengthy. I could go on, but I'm sure you've got other questions.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you bringing to our attention the fact that these articles, or this was referred to your committee rather than Judiciary. Some people might ask why Homeland Security is bringing this rather than the Committee on the Judiciary. So I appreciate that. And that was, I guess, a bipartisan referral to your committee, was it not?
It was, and the Supreme Court has ruled that the will of the House determines our processes, and so the House spoke, and they referred it to us.
So, like everyone else, I've made multiple trips down to the border over the years, and what has been just overly predominantly the sentiment that's been expressed to me is nobody's ever seen anything like this. I mean, this is a catastrophe beyond anything that has ever happened before. We thought there were problems during the Bush years. We knew there were problems during the Obama years. There were problems during the Trump years, but this is unimaginable. What is going on, and just the amount of human suffering that's been caused by the open borders, come on over mentality that has been promulgated by this administration. So let me just ask you, can you provide us just a couple of highlights from your investigation?
Yes, sir. One of the things that became very clear, this is not a migration crisis caused by some event in Latin America or Central America. This is a catastrophe of our own creation. when we did away with the policies, 87 different policies that worked from the previous administration, talked in an election about opening the borders, talked about amnesty in the election, people tested the system. And they came, they realized they were going to be released into the country, and they phoned home. And now millions have come. We took the pull factors and just exploded them into a massive magnet, and people are coming because they know that they're going to get released. 85% actually is what Secretary Mayorkas said in a private meeting that was reported out, are just being released into the country. And with that, the drug cartels have seized the opportunity. They're actually trafficking everybody who comes through Mexico now, charging $10,000 to $50,000, $60,000, $75,000, making tens of billions of dollars for themselves just from the human trafficking. But what they do is they take those mass peoples, they control them, they hit a crossing site, and at the strategic level, that ties up the CBP personnel, and then they're free to come across the border with the fentanyl. And that's why fentanyl's gone from $98 a hit to $20, $25 a hit, in at least Tennessee, in accordance with my sheriffs. It's why so many hundreds of thousands, well, 150,000 Americans have died to fentanyl. It is a policy change that violated the laws. We're not here about policy, we're about violation of the laws written by this body, right? That resulted in the cartels basically owning the southwest border. And the Border Patrol agents tell us, if we can just detain. Well, the law is very clear, shall detain. It doesn't say anywhere in the law, you shall capture every murderer, DOJ, but what Congress told the executive branch, you shall detain. And this only this secretary, not any of the others, Democrat or Republican, only this secretary sent a memo to his people saying, don't do that.
And he was well aware of what these facts that you've just disclosed to us.
Yes, Secretary Mayorkas has been in the department many times, and he knows what the laws are, and he has created systems to subvert those laws.
Well, I appreciate your efforts on this. I know it's been a long task for you and for the committee. I'll defer further questions because I'll talk about this on the floor tomorrow and recognize the ranking member of the Rules Committee.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Burgess. Let me just say, Chairman Green, I have respect for you as a member of this Congress, but quite frankly, reading what is before us, and watching all this unfold, I think you should be ashamed of yourself for bringing this kind of trash before this committee. I mean, we are here because Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Chock full of Nuts caucus wanted us to be here. Let me ask you, Chairman Green, if you succeed and Secretary Mayorkas is impeached, who replaces him? Do we know who will be in charge?
Well, I assume that there's a deputy who would step forward.
You know the
in an
name
interim.
of the, you know the name of the?
No,
You don't?
No.
So, I mean, it seems like it's a pretty.
I don't see why that's relevant.
Well, it is, I mean, because the question is, I mean, will it be somebody who is implementing Biden's policies?
So if he
or will it
murdered
be
someone, would we just not get him out of office
Well,
because he?
so you
I
don't-
mean,
you
there's
don't-
nobody named to follow him.
The answer to the question is you don't know.
You're right,
Who
I
will
don't.
replace? Okay, so let me ask you this: when exactly did you decide to impeach Secretary Mayorkas? Do you know what the exact date was? Was it before or after April 18th, 2023?
April 18th, 2023. Now, we have proceeded with a five-phased approach, looking at this as fairly
Was
as
it
possible.
before or after April 18th, 2023?
I can't tell you when I thought this needed to happen.
Well, the reason why I ask you is I'm looking at a New York Times article
That
of
misquoted
April
me,
18,
yes.
2023, entitled "Key Republicans Tell Donors That He Will Pursue Impeachment of Mayorkas." And they have an audio, they have you on audio tape saying that you would, and I quote, "deliver charges to the House Judiciary Committee, which handles impeachment proceedings." I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert this article into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
I guess the question is, why would you tell donors that you were going to impeach Secretary Mayorkas before you open an investigation? Why would you do that?
The article misquoted me. I do
I
recall
think they have
that.
you on audio, yeah.
Yeah, no, well, they did misquote me. I can tell you. I went back and checked myself.
Well, maybe we can ask them to produce the, but before completion of your investigation, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is the author of this, said that impeachment had been, and I quote, guaranteed to her. That was on November 30th of 2023. And she said, and again, I quote, I've been guaranteed by Speaker Johnson and Chairman Greene that the House would impeach Secretary Mayorkas. Why would you promise her that you would impeach no matter what the evidence said? Or she
By that time, we'd been through a lot of hearings and reports.
So in November 30th, you did promise her.
No, I don't remember ever promising her
Is she
anything.
lying, or is she
I don't know. It could be a misunderstood conversation. That happens all the time in this building.
Yeah, well, boy, but what it sounds to me is like this whole thing is a predetermined performative political stunt. I mean, it's not about the evidence or the Constitution. I think what's happening here is you guys are doing this because Trump told you to.
Mr. Trump has never asked me to do that, and I want to be on the record with that because the accusation has been made multiple times.
But
and to your point about me being embarrassed, sir, I took this oath to the Constitution when I was 17 at West Point.
Trump tweeted.
The Constitution matters to me.
Trump tweets his.
Not.
Yeah, what I'm learning is that Trump tweets.
Let's not talk over each other because our stenographer has trouble with that.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
Trump tweeted that he wanted him gone.
I
So
don't
that's
even
nothing. Yeah, well,
think I follow
it's
him.
hard for me to believe that the Republicans in this House, do not pay attention to every word that is tweeted or uttered by the former president because you seem to be following his orders to a T. Let me ask you, Chairman Greene, if it gives you any pause that so many staunch Republicans and colleagues of yours say that you have no cognizable basis here for impeachment. I don't know if you've heard these quotes, but I'd like to ask you to respond to some of them. A political stunt, and I'm quoting Secretary Michael Chertoff, who's a Bush administration DHS secretary. Another quote, Secretary Mayorkas did not commit an impeachable offense. He is not guilty of high crimes or misdemeanors. That was Representative Ken Buck, who is a Republican in this House. Mr. Chairman, can I have order in the committee, please?
Yeah, the committee will come to order.
Yeah, no. Another quote, these are not impeachable offenses, Representative Tom McClintock. Quote, I haven't seen the constitutional standard met yet, Senator Mitt Romney, who actually ran for president as a Republican nominee against Barack Obama. Quote, there is no current evidence that he is corrupt or committed an impeachable offense. That is why the case has not been made to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. That was Jonathan Turley. I guess I find it shocking the number of Republicans who have basically come out and said that this is nuts. And these are just moderate Republicans. It's a lot of hardcore conservatives have said, let's hit the brakes here.